You're listening to In the Chair, a podcast for Freemasons in England, the UK and around the world. Find out more at masonicpodcast.com. But first, welcome your host, Robert Bone.
Hello there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you're having a great day whenever and wherever you are. And I'm Robert Bone, and I'm the host of this, and this is In the Chair, a podcast about Masonry, Freemasonry, and it's for Freemasons in England, in the UK, and of course all around the world. And today we are picking up on part 2 of my interview with David West. If you haven't heard the first part, none of this will make sense. You'll probably listen to it, hear none of the backstory, none of the reason why we're talking about what we're doing, and probably just end up taking offence at it. So please, if you haven't already, go back to episode 23. You can find that by going to masonicpodcast.com/23, either clicking the links to then listen to it in iTunes or on Stitcher, whatever your preferred service for podcasts is, or there's a little player on there. You can just click the play button on there and listen to it. And the reason I've done this interview with David is I mentioned before I'd got a book by him, and it really struck a chord with me. It was called Managing the Future of Freemasonry. And it really struck a chord with me, and because he had looked at it from a different viewpoint and basically highlighted some of the thoughts that maybe I hadn't actually thought of, but were in the back of my mind. And when I was reading it, there was many moments where I thought, yeah, that makes sense. And he looked at the history, looked at the last 200 years, not just of Freemasonry, but the whole socio-economic spectrum and political side of things, of what was happening in the years, how that applied to Freemasonry, and then draw parallels to how things are today. For example, the technological revolution that we're sort of currently in, and people losing their jobs, can be similar to the Industrial Revolution, and to how that was, how that sort of affected Freemasonry. And we managed to get through that, but Freemasonry almost come out of existence back then. There was a massive decline. Fortunately, it managed to stay on, and it wasn't really and slowly build up again through the years. And what we're looking at is, well, what happened there, and how could we then try to reuse that again? Look at, really learn from those not mistakes, but how can we push forward again, and to make sure that we don't get to the brink of extinction again, and if anything, actually thrive from it. As I mentioned in the previous one, we are independent. I put this podcast out completely independently. I'm not getting any support from the United Grand Lodge of England. And so, these are what I say, my thoughts. And again, with David's written his books independently. Those are his thoughts. Bear in mind, these are only thoughts. Some people, some of the traditionalist side of things, might not be completely easy with what we're talking about. That is maybe one of the reasons why we're having this discussion. Sometimes maybe some things, maybe have to be aired, maybe have to be discussed, maybe need to be considered. We're not offering solutions. We're not just trying to pick problems for the sake of it, but we are sort of acknowledging, say, look, there are potential problems. There have been potential problems in the past. How can we marry this together? Let's look at the bigger picture of things. And everything that David talks about has been referenced and researched as well. So it's not like two chaps sitting around in the pub just saying, well, I think. This hopefully is a research and a research debate on it. And, so I do hope it sparks something in your mind. I recommend definitely reading the book, Managing the Future of Freemasonry. All the links to David's books and everything we're talking about are available on the website. And this is episode 24. It's at masonicpodcast.com/24. And of course, for the last one, it's /23. So in combination, these should all come together. And David's hopefully going to be coming back on In the Chair in the future to hopefully talk about a bit more putting these theories into practice and how he's done it with his lodge, St. Lawrence Lodge in Essex, how they've applied that and how that's now bringing in 3, 4, 5 candidates per year. So he's not just talking from theory. He has put this these thinking into practice in his own lodge and is seeing the results of it, which is why he's written the book. And and I'm now I thought it was important. And I think it deserves to be brought to a wider audience. So hopefully you will think the same. As I said, podcast is number 24, so it's masonicpodcast.com/24. If you haven't listened to the previous one, please make sure you listen to episode 23 first, or none of this is going to make sense.
Yes, the rules of Benedict, you don't just join it. You had to spend a long time learning it, learning whether you can accept it, trying it out, so to speak, over a period of time, or being kind of tested. I mean, not exams, but just saying, "Are you sure?" sort of thing.
Yes.
Because once you accept it, you commit to it for life. As an analogy, joining Freemasonry should be the same thing. What we're saying is, look, if you want to become a Freemason, this is what you have to accept. Right? These are our values, and they're about brotherly love, relief, and truth. And I go through, in the book, I go through what they mean.
Yes.
And they're about the 4 cardinal virtues. Now, if you want to join us, this is what you've got to do. You can't join us and say you don't believe in those, because it makes no sense to say you're going to join Freemasonry and not be a good one, because Freemasonry is a moral order.
Yes.
It's part of what we are. So.
Yeah, there was a great. That's something you just reminded me about. Something in the book about that, which I sort of thought, which was the. It's actually a quote from Wittgenstein. Is that correct?
Wittgenstein. Yeah.
Wittgenstein, who had used about playing tennis. And actually, I'll just read it because I've got it here in front of me. Because this illustrated why, when people say, about being a good Mason, why would people say I want to be a Mason and not a good one? And it's supposing you could play tennis and one of you and you saw me playing and said, well, you play pretty badly, and I suppose I answered, I know I play badly, but I don't want to play any better. The other man would say, oh well, that's all right then. But suppose I told you a lie. Come up to me and said, you're behaving like a beast, I acted badly, and then you were to say, I know I behave badly, but I don't want to behave any better. Just sort of, to summarise it there, would anyone say, well, that's all right then? If you're... No, it's the sort of like, well, why would you say... Why is it okay to say with one thing, I can't be bothered to be any better at this? But then if you're behaving badly, you wouldn't say, oh, well, that's okay then, carry on doing your misdemeanours.
That's quite, yeah.
And, that again sort of made me think, well, if you're going to be doing Freemasonry, you can't just sort of go, well, I'll be a bad one. There's, yeah.
I mean, a Freemason once said to me that he would do a job for me, and I could pay cash and avoid VAT. And I said, look, you cannot even say that to me and be a Freemason.
Right.
Because that is immoral.
Yes.
And don't offer it to me, because I certainly wouldn't accept it. And,
yes.
You're being a bad Freemason saying that.
Right, yeah.
Well, that may be extreme. I don't think it is, but some people might think it's extreme. But I believe that Freemasonry is a moral order, and that people will join it in order, find a society where morals matter.
Yes.
That's what we're really about.
I think
not about philanthropy. Philanthropy, yes, we do a bit of that, but we primarily exist in order to preserve morality.
And I think one solution you propose, and I'm not saying this is what you actually propose, but one idea you put forward in the book would be that actually members don't join, they don't actually pay the membership fee until they've become a Master Mason, because by then they've actually learned what Freemasonry is about.
Yeah, well, that's part of the analogy with the rules of Benedict. Yeah.
Yes.
When you've actually done your 3rd degree, you're not really a Mason, so you can walk away, so to speak. Bit of a problem there with some of the secrets, but never mind.
Yeah, I really like it. That's why I say it's not like you're actually suggesting that, but it's a possible solution you'd sort of put forward to say, in theory, we could actually, which sort. If anything, it does, it makes you think. I think that's, why you sort of put that in there. It does make you think, yes, we do need to look at, sort of things. And, let's say if once a Mason, you're always a Mason, but you need to make sure that you understand those sort of things and how, Masonry is sold. Not to say that and some lodges do, and, obviously, St. Lawrence has got a great way of doing it. I know other lodges, like North Harrow, that they are bringing lots of members as well, and I think it's because they're being open and explaining. I know when I almost didn't join Freemasonry, I was interested. I was then talking about it with a person who had proposed me, once I'd sort of, this sounds great, we were then having another conversation. He started then talking about how the Worshipful Master does this, and you have these deacons and the senior warden, and using all of this sort of. I found it quite off-putting. And then when he started saying about the Grand Architect and crikey, what's this? And I've actually now just recently put on our lodge website, a little glossary of terms, and it says, Worshipful Master. Basically, that's the old-fashioned way of saying chairman of the committee, and to try to sort of break it down a little bit there. I haven't taken it so far as to maybe sort of talk about what Freemasonry is, and I think that would be the next natural progression actually from the website, is to start thinking, well, yes, need to explain it a little bit more and actually start bringing into practice what you're talking about here. And but I think that's something we're going to have to look at to explain, to make it a bit more obvious to the casual observer what we actually do in that side of things, and not just from the charitable organisation, but actually what we're actually standing for, some of our morals and what some of those are. And to be honest, I think some of those people, if they're looking at a Masonic website and they see this is what we stand for, these are our virtues, will go, bang on, that's what I want. And hopefully they'll be drawn to that side of things, and not the here's what we're not, or the religious aspect, especially if they aren't the believer of the the big guy in the sky in the traditional sense. They'll still be attracted to the morals and the virtues and that side of things. So I think that's something that we need to promote. And I mean, obviously, we've just been talking about the book Managing the Future of Freemasonry. That's not the only book you've written. Another book of yours, which isn't the largest of books, and I think it's deliberately done that way, is something that also has just come out, which is Masonic Recruitment as well, which is almost taking the you're starting from a more practical side of things, which is based on it's a shortened version of a more longer book. It's what to do when you have nothing to do. Is that correct? That's things to do when you have nothing to do. 18
pages long. Yes. I think you can get it on Kindle for £1.99 from memory.
Yes, I got it. I think
also get it as a printed book as well.
Yes, for about £3, whereas it actually says on the description or somewhere on the back for the price of a cup of coffee. You could save that. You could start start saving a lodge for the price of a cup of coffee.
And we get increasing number of lodges now saying to us, look, we're doing that. We've got your book. We're trying to do it. It's all about the law of paradoxical intent.
Yes.
And doing something different, and I got constantly asked to go out and tell people. So I thought, well, if I'd given the book, then I wouldn't have to go out and give lectures all the time.
Right.
It's part of the bigger book. It's taken from the bigger book, Things to Do.
Yes.
Which has a wonderful picture of me riding a unicycle.
It was actually you. I didn't realise that was actually you on the front of it.
Yeah, it was very difficult, that was.
I actually genuinely thought, how the heck did you manage to find a picture like that on one of these, sort of like photo places where you can get for images, and what search terms did you have to put to find a Freemason on a unicycle juggling?
I mean, the chappie, a wonderful lodge secretary, was Brother Laurie Morrison, who's absolutely marvellous. He runs our website, but he also designs my books.
Right.
And what that is, it had me in the kitchen standing with my foot on one of the hop-ups.
Oh, okay. So there's a little bit of artistic
just
license.
like that, and smiling in my gear.
Right.
Yeah. With a candidate watching me, would you believe it? The candidate's girlfriend in my kitchen, my wife. And then he photoshopped the rest of it in.
Right.
Bits and pieces. So it was great fun. But that book has lots of things you can do in lodge when you have candidates, because what bothers me is that people go around saying to their brethren, go and get us candidates, we must have candidates.
Yes.
And when they fail, right, they feel bad. Well, why make the brethren feel bad? Because that actually destroys the lodge.
Yeah, why would they want to bring people in?
Good.
Yeah.
So here is a whole lot of things you can do which are exciting and different, which get people feeling good about themselves, and therefore talk about the lodge and so on. Because people talk about interesting things, not about dull grey things.
Yes.
I say, don't have talks in lodge. They're boring. No one's listening. It's only excuse between the opening and the drinks.
Yes.
Don't ever have a rehearsal. It's like, I better not use the analogy that jumped into my head there, but it's kind of not real, is it?
No.
I'm saying, think of all the things that we need to learn and can learn about Freemasonry that we can do in lodge. I mean, for example, the 18th century lodges, what was it? Only 2 degrees, only 1 to start with. No installation of a master.
Right.
They met every month, sometimes every week. They did their initiations in a side room.
Right.
Yeah. So what were they doing?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say. So what? Yeah, what?
They weren't doing the Masonic waltz because there wasn't. You go. It's a hop dance, so 1-1-1 sort of thing.
Yes.
What they were doing, of course, is working the lectures.
Right.
The lectures are full of wonderful stuff.
Yes.
And we can use those. We show in this particular book ways of using them. Just doing them undigested is a bit tough, but ways of doing them. There's lots of things you can do in a lodge, which makes life exciting. I mean, one of the lodges near us was in deep trouble.
Right.
And they said to us, can you help us? So we put some heads together and we came up with this idea of a history of the family of this lodge, all its predecessors and all its successors, and put together a show which told them all those lodges and things like that. And it was a massive show with slides and music and everything else like that. Laurie was working his little head off and so on and so forth. And they had 120 people turn up. Normally they had 20.
Right.
And everyone got excited in the lodge and outside. About a year later, we went to them and said, look, would you like to do a degree for us? Because we can't do our seconds and thirds. We tend to take them out to the lodges. Got too much work to do. And they said, no, we got candidates now. So
brilliant.
They got excited.
Yeah.
I'm not saying one event makes the difference really, but get excited, do different things.
You wouldn't want to introduce someone to something where you're going to sit around and do the same thing and generally get reprimanded at the festive board from the visiting sort of, provincial chap who's basically telling you that you've got to get more candidates in. Why would you want to bring your friends and family into something like that when it's something where it's like, well, actually, we meet up and we have fun and it's a bit serious here, but we do this and you'll enjoy it. Come along.
Yes, quite.
Why to say to some? I think that's the phrase. Actually, you'd enjoy it. Why didn't you come along? Why don't you join? You're not going to say that if you're not enjoying it yourself. And it's the thing, and you get everyone in the lodge enjoying it and enjoying their Freemasonry. They're then going to be more up for it, and they're going to go, actually, I've got a mate of mine who would quite enjoy this.
They're quite absolutely right.
No one enjoys being told off, or feeling the pressure to, whether it's feeling pressure to do the work in lodge or feeling the pressure of trying to, keep the lodge going. I guess, and I think when things do start getting small, it's that. I guess there's a declining circle. I guess, and it's the reciprocal motion. If you can start getting things going, then it will breed more. It'll get more momentum. I guess that's what we're looking at there, and get the momentum going on it.
Do something different.
Yeah,
if you do things deliberately, not looking for candidates, they'll appear.
I think
the law of paradoxical intent.
Yeah, I think a marketing term, which is it there, is you want to be zagging when everyone else is zigging.
Perhaps so.
Do the opposite. It's pretty basically do the opposite to what everyone else is doing. Because then, if you're doing the opposite, you're going to stand out. I mean, that maybe goes back a little bit further to what you're saying. Is nowadays, especially with the management structure in place, I guess with Freemasonry, is people don't want to make mistakes.
Yes, quite.
Whereas
that is the problem.
And so what I would do want to zag when everyone else is zigging, because why would we do that? Because all the other lodges are. We don't want to stand out from the other lodges. It's like, no, you have to, if you want people to notice you and to join your lodge, you've got to stand out. You've got to be different, because people do want something different.
The brethren want to be exciting. They don't want to be doing dull things.
I guess the problem is...
I see sometimes when I'm talking to lodges that they're not doing too well, I say, well, look, ask yourself, don't answer me, don't answer out loud, but ask yourself privately in your own heart, would you introduce someone into this lodge? And look at their faces, you know what the answer is. But so we get something exciting. Would you introduce someone to this? Yeah, of course I would. In the early days when we did this sort of thing, started it going, some brethren said, are we allowed to do this? And I said, I'm pretty sure we can, but I'm not interested anyway. I mean, I'd rather be hung for sins of commission than sins of omission. Let's get it going, try it out. In fact, nothing that we do is contrary to anything in the whatever it is, the Book of Constitutions anyway. But Get it going. Stop thinking about what you did do. Stop thinking about what you can't do. Start thinking what you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed that like with this podcast, I'm the only podcast that in the UK. There are some in America and around the world, but the only UK person who's doing a podcast like this. And when I started it, I thought, should I be doing that? Am I going to be getting a letter from Grand Lodge saying, please desist what you're doing?
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, to be honest, I'll just get on and do it because no one else is doing it, and it's a medium. And it turns out, actually, I get quite a lot of support from how should we say? I get quite a lot of support from the rank and file Masons and the people interested in Freemasonry and the new members and the people interested in joining who are finding this because no one else is doing it.
Yeah,
and that's
quite.
the thing, is that's what people, I guess I took a bit of a risk and I thought, well, to be honest, if it all goes wrong and I get told not to do it, then in a couple of years' time, I'll be saving money on buying myself a dark blue apron. I just thought, for me, it's a win-win. And genuinely, in my mind, I justified that. I thought, if it all goes wrong, then at least I've saved myself on having to buy a new apron in 7 years. And again,
so, right. I mean, you say that things are like this happening in America. I mean, we talked about the book Managing the Future of Freemasonry. I don't know of any other British books like that, but there are plenty in America.
Right.
I mean, if your listeners are interested, I mean, there are people like John Bizek,
right,
written a book called Taking Issues. It's well worth a look.
Right.
The one that sold 8,000 copies already is Andrew Hammer's Observing the Craft.
Right.
Wonderful book. Kirk C. White's written a short book called Operative Freemasonry. Well worth a quick, it doesn't take 20 minutes to read.
Right.
There's a chap called Richard Greater, Graeter, who has a website called Reform Freemasonry.
Right.
Which is published a couple of, I think, very, very good essays on what's happening in Freemasonry, why it's going wrong, sort of thing, and what to do. So there's a lot of thinking going on.
Yes.
And I think what we need to do is to get a sort of groundswell of this thinking going on here in the UK and in America, and work together to start keep people thinking differently.
Yes.
I don't want to think that turning around and saying, you're rotten so-and-sos, you people at the top, you're useless. I don't think that's right at all. I think those people at the top have committed themselves to Freemasonry. They work very hard for Freemasonry.
Yes.
But I just want them to start thinking differently as well. And I think if we get the groundswell coming up from underneath, it will encourage them to do.
Yes.
If we ask them, look, don't tell us what to do, support us in change, I think that will open the world up for Freemasonry.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe there is an audience out there that's hungry for what we can offer. They
just don't realise it. That is right in front of them, and they might be thinking, "Well, I don't want to join the Freemasons. They're a funny bunch," purely because they don't actually know what Freemasons are or what they do. There's just that.
We haven't told them.
They don't know. They know. They're a funny bunch that roll up their trouser legs, and apparently they do some money to charity, but they're not a religious organisation, and they're not this, they're not that, they're not this.
My first Masonic book was called The Goat, the Devil, and the Freemasonry.
Yes, I meant to mention that actually. Yes.
It's a history of ideas, and I had a great deal of fun with it, and I hope people really had fun because it's got some funny bits in it, and it's meant to be light. For example, I mean, how many times would you see the Wild West in a book about Freemasonry, for example, the Comanche, the Comanchera. But it's got on the front cover a picture of what people might take as being the devil. With square and compasses.
Right.
There's square and crossbones there, didn't I? Do you know that the shop in Letchworth, the shop in Freemasons, refused to stock it because of the cover?
Okay.
And you look at some of the rubbish that's on their shelves.
Right.
I found that very amusing, actually.
Because I thought for that the title was very provocative, which is great because it actually,
it's a fun title. I thought it was a laugh.
But it's done in a way because that's in a way it's taking the mick out of ourselves a little bit, isn't it? Almost, or to what people sometimes maybe ask those questions or have those. I read on an internet site that Freemasonry is. It's one of these little weird conspiracy things. I mean, they also said, and there's also all these other weird conspiracies on there, but it's on the internet, so it must be true. So it's, I mean, partly we've got to, as Freemasons, we've got to battle, these crazy things. The amount of times, I see these crazy, not just about Freemasonry, but anything in general, people seem to share on Facebook. And because it was written on the internet, on the Daily Mail website or one of these other things, then obviously it must be true. And actually, even in that, you mentioned in the book about how, basically, newspapers, basically only about 5% of people actually trust newspapers. And they openly admit that they don't even, write that they're not even writing factual information half the time.
Well, I think we've been watching that War. What's it called? War and Peace.
Right. Oh, I haven't myself, but no.
On the TV. There was at one point. I think it's Ken Stott playing the character. Meets the hero, Prince. Right. I can pronounce his name. Not going to try. And says you must join the Freemasons.
Right.
And the guy said, "Why?" He said, "Because you're thinking too much about yourself. You need to start thinking about other people."
Right. Okay.
And I thought, well, that's a nice positive compliment on television, and exactly what we're about, thinking about other people. And I thought, well, for once, we've got something there, which is, I mean, obviously it's a great novel, isn't it? Except it's awful long. But
yes, that's what put me off.
And this is a great thing on television, except it's awfully like a soap opera, really. Right. Done. It's high quality soap opera.
Right.
And I thought it was very nice to have that positive statement there.
Yeah, and I guess we need to look at the positive statements and not just rely, the crux of it is going to the charity. And when especially with the tercentenary, the 300th anniversary of United Grand Lodge coming up next year as well, obviously, Freemasonry is going to be trying to take as much advantage of that on the PR side of things and to get out there. So we really need to make sure if we're going to be drawing attention to Freemasonry, when people do actually land on the websites, that they're actually finding,
something worth reading.
Yeah, and they're not just going to be finding out what we're not and seeing pictures of us handing checks to scout groups. Now that is all good. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing that, but we need to be looking at more so that when those people find it, they actually realise who we are and why we're getting together and why we're all sticking £5 in the raffle, which actually manages to raise the funds so we can give the money to the scout group. That really is sort of like the it's not the main reason, but it's an offshoot. It's basically a pleasant spin-off, and as you said earlier, it's not like Freemasonry wasn't designed upward as a charitable organisation. That's just something that seems to have crept in and been adopted.
And there's nothing wrong with charity.
Yes,
good Lord. I would like personally to see charity aimed less at the great national charities and more at local charities.
Right.
So that lodges in, Bedford, to choose a name, city at random, should be helping out people in Bedford.
Yes.
That there's probably a scout group in Bedford that could do with some money, or there's a Sea Scout outfit in Sheerness that could do with some help, things like that, or wherever. That's where I'd like to see the stuff going to get it into the local area, because frankly, it's the local area where your people you want to recruit are.
Yes.
They're not sort of spread out across Britain.
Yes.
Because your lodge exists in a locality.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things... Yeah, this is what I was told, and I still hear it told to other people when talking about what Freemasonry is. We get together, charity, and then the stat that's always wheeled out is when there was the tsunami that hit in Thailand, the Pacific area around Christmas, was it 2001, I think, somewhere around that. And we always say, the Freemasons were the first people to make £1 million donation. I can't remember what the exact stat was now. They made the big donation straight away. And that was one of the things where you sort of think, okay, great, we're a big organisation, made, multi-million-pound donations in aid. However, I think sometimes some people would actually appreciate to know that they had actually had that, the smaller donations, which, they can see. And I think sometimes that sometimes crops up. You now find like Children in Need and Comic Relief, and now really not just trying to say, oh, the money gets sent overseas to help, famine in Africa. They're also talking about how it is getting used in your local community. I've noticed that over recent years, they've really tried to push it doesn't all get sent overseas in big packages. It will fund, local community projects on the smaller scale as well. And I
think our response to the Somerset flooding was pretty damn good.
Right.
Because that is kind of local there, and we gave
Yes.
the money to Somerset Grand Lodge. Essex gave a lot of money, and that was really good. Because people could then see what was happening.
Yes.
I'm not sure what happened with. I'm sure we gave some money to lodges. The Grand Lodge was at Northumbria and Cumbria. But that, I think, is good. And I have nothing against money going abroad either. But I'd like to see us focusing more on our own brethren's needs.
Yes.
And they are genuine, because we've got lots of situations where brethren don't know where their money's coming from next week, so to speak,
yes.
because the insecurity of work, but also the needs of the local community in which we live. And I think that will give us more bang for the buck, as the Americans say.
Yes. That's
what, and then the people. Then, if we can make positive statements about what we are, and that we are about values and morality and trust, and building what the jargon word I know, social capital, but defending ourselves against that life becoming, in Hobbes' ringing phrase, nasty, brutish, and short. Then I think that we will get the response. And then our brethren will feel good about themselves, and they will know what they're there for. And then we're taking, if you like, the whole order, turning it from negative to positive, and then we get the response.
Yeah, and that's
just as we do in the improvement book.
And I think we're sort of bringing that sort of full circles. We've got to do that, and when you look at it, and taking the lessons of the past, because as you said, back in the time of the Industrial Revolution, Freemasonry was on the decline and almost fizzled out, and
because the
adapting,
leadership at the time did nothing about it, did
yes.
they? I mean, we all think of the Duke of Sussex as a great guy because of the union of the two Grand Lodges. Yeah, well, great, fantastic. But after that, he didn't do much. And there was no recognition among the hierarchy in the Provincial Grand Lodge at that time of what was happening there.
Yeah. In fact,
and Provincial Grand Lodges had never 20 years between meetings.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that shocked me, because you again, in the book, you're referencing and talking about three, I think you focus on 3 different provinces, just as an example, but it's sort of like, they weren't really installed, and they were just given the position almost, and it would be like 5 years before they actually had their installation into their official ceremony. And then
some of them were brought all the time anyway.
Yeah, and hardly any of them actually, when they did the meetings would be cancelled, or hardly anything would happen, and then they'd go off, and because they were getting offered the positions because of the position they were already in, and they were already MPs and things, and they just had bigger things on their plates. In that respect, so they weren't really focusing on Freemasonry. I think
that's important for 2 reasons. One is that Freemasonry virtually died at that period, didn't it?
Yes.
You see, the decline of lodges was very rapid. But what happened was nothing to do. What saved it was nothing to do with what any part of the management did. It was just the rise of the middle class, which we couldn't cause. I mean, it just happened.
Yes.
And fortunately, the Victorian middle class values and what I see as our values coincided brilliantly, and it took off. Marvellous, wonderful, and lasted 100 years because the middle class actually lasted until the 1950s. But we can't rely on serendipity again. It's not going. We can't rely on luck this time around. It's got to be do something about it. And the other thing is that what they were appointing in those days was establishment figures, as you just said, the MPs and so on, not change agents. And I think what we need is leadership of change rather than establishment.
Yes.
I've got nothing against people who've done things in become Lord Mayor, what they may be. That's great.
Yes.
Nothing against that whatsoever. I don't want them appointed because of that. I want them appointed because they've shown in being Lord Mayor that they change things.
They have taken. They do have that they're able to take a risk maybe and take a calculated risk, make the odd mistake, not berate people who are also taking calculated risks and making the odd mistake, because that is going to mix things up and change things. And if it hits on the new formula to bring people in, then that's what we're really aiming for, isn't it?
Absolutely right. And then in our membership, there must be, I say there is, but to be honest, I don't have the evidence, but there must be, must there not, people with experience in organisation development, in management development, management change, and so on, who can get involved with that, helping people create this change.
Yes, they have that skill set.
And they are not necessarily going to be in the hierarchy. I mean, rank does not imply knowledge.
No.
Or, you know.
No, okay. Well, David, I was going to say we've been chatting quite a while on this.
Yes, we have.
I just noticed that.
So I enjoyed it very immensely.
Don't worry. Well, I was going to say what I'd like to do is of course we've spent today mainly speaking. I know we've covered a few other subjects as well, but mainly speaking about the book "Managing the Future of Freemasonry." That is done through Lewis Masonic and published by Lewis Masonic. You can find Lewis Masonic on their website. I think it's lewismasonic.com or .co.uk.
It's actually published by Hamilton House.
Oh, Hamilton House, but it's through
marketed through Lewis Masonic.
But Lewis Masonic, and it's also on. Oh, thanks for correcting me there. It's also available on Amazon as well. What I'll do is I'll set it up so if anyone's interested in this, if they go on to masonicpodcast.com/future. What will happen is that link will then redirect people through to Amazon. So they can, instead of having to try to type, remember that, just go masonicpodcast.com/future. That will redirect there. And of course, once you're on there, you can then click David's name and that will show everyone the other books that you've written as well. So instead of having
they can also buy it off the Lewis Masonic website.
That's what I was going to say. Yes, there's on the Lewis Masonic website and on Amazon. The reason, and you've just reminded me by saying about Lewis Masonic, is the Amazon link will of course work for people who are in the UK because it will go onto .co.uk. But if you go onto Lewis Masonic, I do believe they ship internationally. But I'll make sure. I'll make sure all the links for that are going to be in the show notes. So if anyone's interested in it, they can of course pop onto the website, follow the links through, find all of that. David, what would be great is I think we've covered so much of the theory on this, and I know obviously you're very involved with the Lodge website, which is a big thing as well, and also about how and we also touched on it, things to do when you've got nothing to do. I think there's people who are listening to this going, what are these things? Obviously, first thing, go out and buy the book. But it'd be great if we could speak again in the future. Let people digest what we've been talking about. Go out, get the book, Managing the Future of Freemasonry. Read that, and then maybe have you back on in a couple of weeks again to then start talking a little bit more about how all this theory and all this grand scheme that we've been talking about, how they can actually apply it in their lodge.
Indeed, yes. Great. Love to.
So it genuinely has been fantastic speaking to David. As when I first found out about the book, I just knew it was going to click with me. I wanted to try to skim through it quickly to get an idea, but I was just so drawn into it. And so many statements just really made me sit up and read again. I think anyone who is in Freemasonry should obviously read it. And if you're in the situation maybe a little bit like me, which is probably why you might be listening to the podcast, you're thinking, we do need to, I wouldn't say modernise, but review Freemasonry in a way. Just look at the past and how it's affecting the future. It's definitely a very good read. So I recommend everyone to read that. So many thanks, David. Well, firstly, not just many thanks for being on the show, but thank you for actually, I'd say, writing the book and maybe having the bottle to zag when everyone else was zigging and look at things from a different angle and reference it so well. It's obviously a lot of effort has gone into the book.
Enjoyable effort.
It's enjoyable. That's good. It's definitely an enjoyable read as well. So David West, many thanks.
I look forward to talking to you again.
Many thanks for being in the chat. And we'll speak to you again. Big thanks once again to David West from St. Lawrence Lodge, number 5511 in the Masonic province of Essex, which is in England here in the UK. Many thanks, not just for being on the podcast, but as I said, for also writing the book, for basically having the bottle to put some of these thoughts out there. As he said in the interview, there are books like this out in America, but as far as he could tell, there's not many like this in the UK. And similarly, and I sort of paralleled it with me putting together In the Chair for the podcast. So, I'd like to say that we're mavericks out there. That's probably pushing it a little bit too much. But and again, hope no one was offended in anything in there. Granted, we are putting up, and I mentioned it, we are putting up across our personal, individual thoughts on this. I'd like to think that many of you will agree, maybe not on everything, and that's absolutely fine. I think what we're trying to do I think when David wrote the book and when I read the book and wanted to have him on, we're not trying to say these things because we're saying, right, we're right and everyone else is wrong. Far be it from that. And we respect, obviously, everyone who's, in positions of hierarchy at the United Grand Lodge of England, no matter how it might have sounded then, because, of course, it's a subject, I think, hopefully you can tell, we're both passionate about, and that's why we're talking about this. Because what we're sort of saying is... And I think, and I mentioned this after we'd finished recording, because I kind of got the feeling that, basically what David's doing with his books, what I'm trying to do with the podcast, we're not trying to do this to impress people in order to sort of get provincial honours and rank and that sort of thing. I do this because of my love of Freemasonry. David does it due to his love of Freemasonry and wanting it to be better for the whole. It might not be for everyone's cup of tea. If it isn't, I apologise. No doubt you enjoy some of the other episodes that we're having. If it is something that you did feel was so, tick the box, please do let me know, and also let David know. You can do that either through Twitter. Contact me. It's on Twitter at Masonic Podcast. Or there's the comments on the website. You do need to sort of when you do a comment, it's a simple register sort of process, just to prove that you're a human being and not just a auto spamming type thing to try and lead onto other websites and say horrible things. So I'll mention that. Put any comments on there, and of course drop me an email. It's roberts@masonicpodcast.com, and also any questions from it, because as I said at the end of it, hopefully David's going to be coming back on to talk about how he's been putting this into practice actually in his lodge. So if you have questions or any thoughts, because we have got, we did get into quite a bit of detail in there. Obviously, recommend reading the book. Links for that on the show notes. But if you do have any questions, ask, please ask, and I can make sure we can ask David either next time he's on, or I'll just drop him an email, and and I can try and get back to you personally on it as well. The idea is, we're trying to do this for the greater good of Freemasonry as a whole. That's probably the polite way to put it. I know I've mentioned it a few times before, but also it's a great help if you can also support me a little bit. And the reason I say that is if you pop on, basically, I'm a professional magician, mind reader. I do close-up magic at weddings and corporate events and Christmas parties and, of course, ladies' nights. And I can do that with a combination of going around either mingling around in the bar, or going around tables, the tables between the courses, and also doing a cabaret show at the end of my either from a little 5-minute stand-up bit through to a full 45-minute sort of mind-reading show. If you'd be interested in looking into that, either for ladies' nights or anything like that, please get in contact. You can find out more. Just simply go to masonicpodcast.com/magic. That link will redirect you through onto my professional website. And when you contact me, either if you do it through email or from the little form on the website, make sure you just, in the little quote bit, just mention Masonic Podcast, and I'll ensure you get a 15% discount. Of course, there might be travel costs involved, but from the main standard price, of course, I'll make sure there's a discount on there, the 15% discount. So I hope you have enjoyed that. As I said, David has written the main book that we were talking about there is Managing the Future of Freemasonry. We also touched on Masonic recruitment, which is a very abbreviated version of things to do when you have nothing to do. And that also talks about what you can be doing in Lodge to bring people in as well. I suggest checking those out as well as David's other books. Remember, you can find that by going to masonicpodcast.com/future, but then when that take you onto the amazon.co.uk site, but you can link from there onto other ones. I've been Robert Bone, and I'll catch you next week, and I hope you've enjoyed the interview.
Thank you for listening to In the Chair. Visit masonicpodcast.com to see the show notes and in-the-chair.co.uk for more resources to help you get the most out of your Masonic journey. If you enjoyed the show, please let us know by rating and reviewing it on iTunes. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss our next podcast. If you're not already, follow us on Twitter at Masonic Podcast.